of the staff that we have every day. We could also just say it is a performance management is a process of ensuring that our employees are focusing their work and efforts in ways that contribute to achieving the organization's mission, and that it is also a management measures the progress being made towards the achievements of these goals. So it's continuous. Performance management is not one thing, it's something that continues. And so as we go on, I think I will ask a question at this point, and I will ask Kate, because you're the one that is my best student so far. The question is, at what point does performance management start? I would like to hear from us. At what point do we start measuring it?
Madam Beatrice?
Yes?
Sorry, I lost you a little bit, but I think I heard the last word.
I'm asking at what point I would like the members, so that first of all, I know that we have members and you're not the only careful student. At what point does performance management start?
The performance actually should start at the entry point. Performance management typically start during the onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually where it should start, so that now you'll start preparing your employee from the onset.
Asante sana. Any other view? Yes, Cecilia? Cecilia? Cecilia, you're muted. Any other person? All right, I think we'll go to the next question, and I'm hoping we can get Cecilia this time unmuted and any other person that is in attendance. Who is to be held to account for performance management?
Maybe I can try. Lucy here.
Go ahead, Lucy, yes.
I would say it's everyone within the organization, an individual contributor for their own individual performance, and then the line managers for the team performance all the way up. And then the HR plays the overall accountability function within the organization.
Thank you very much. Any other view?
I can attempt.
Go ahead.
One, it's responsibility for the HR to kickstart the process. Definitely employees and managers and supervisors have a role to play, and definitely the whole leadership and executive. So start with HR, because it has to start. Even there should be a policy on performance management. So he takes the lead and others follows.
Thank you very much. Any other person?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, I'll start by saying that the performance management is a continuous process, that you don't have a specific time that you start. And as one has said, it all depends with the organization policies. And for it, the responsibility rise, it's a mutual thing because it escalates from the lowest to the highest. Thank you.
Asante sana. Any other person?
Yes, Madam Teacher. Personally, I think the accountability also, in agreement with my colleagues, lies on the individuals. So once you are hired, your performance, you're actually the one who is supposed to drive your individual targets in conjunction, of course, with the leadership in the organization. Thank you.
All right. Asante. Any other view as we go on? I'll start by saying, or allow me to go on and agree with the students that I have, that this process, the performance management process, starts with a job. It starts when we know or identify a position that is vacant. And for us to be successful, the questions that we have to start asking ourselves, even as we start this process, is, what are the tasks for this job? What will the person that will take this job do from morning up to evening? What is their day like? The other question we want to ask, is there someone else that can do these tasks internally? The reason we want to ask about whether there's someone else that can do these tasks internally is, in my introduction, I said that performance management has to do even with the motivation of our employees. If you bring in someone to do a task that somebody else is able to do, you're demotivating other people. So the first thing is to ask, do we have any other person who has these skills that we need? The other question is, can these tasks be distributed? This job that we have seen and it has these tasks, can these tasks be distributed to other people? We are asking ourselves this as we really try to define this job, being very careful. I know Hakuna Kazi Kenya, and all of us want to give jobs to people because as HRs, who does not have 10 people or more that are waiting on them to get jobs? But we have to ask before we bring in someone, these tasks, can they be distributed to other people? And then the other question we must ask is, are there other tasks other than these ones that we are identified that could be added to make this job complete? So that's the first questions, or that's where we begin, by identifying the job and the tasks that have to do with this job. When we have done that, then we ask ourselves another question. What skills do we need? Now that we know the tasks, this person will wake up in the morning and sweep. This person will wake up in the morning and clean. This is our HR that we are hiring. This is a director we are hiring. This is a driver we are hiring. We have identified the job and those tasks. So then we ask ourselves, what skills does the job holder need for this job? Do we have these skills internally? Are there other people who we can train internally to have these skills? And then the most other important question to ask even as we begin is, where do we get the persons with such skills? If I am looking for a driver, where do I get good drivers who can speak English and can drive well? If you're looking for a tour company, where do you get a driver that is good and knows monkeys by all their names and where they live and which trees they climb highest? If you're looking for a receptionist, where do you get receptionists that are well trained and have customer service skills? So we have to start also as we understand the competencies, knowing what skills do we need for this job. I will pause there and ask whether there's any question or I go on. Any question? All right. Moving forward, the other question we want to ask ourselves, please note that this is all before this person has onboarded. It's way before. We are asking ourselves, how do we remunerate Now we're in the question of remuneration. How do we remunerate people with similar skills and similar tasks internally? Is our rate competitive compared to other like institutions? Do we have money for this position? Because sometimes, and it has happened, and I'm sure we will be dealing with this as in the next session, is where you hire someone and realize 4 months later, you're running out of budget for this position. How long is this position for? This now also will determine the duration of this contract that we're giving this person. How long will this position be for? Is it short-term? Is it long-term? What resources will the job holder need to do their job? Do they need a laptop? Do they need a broom? Do they need a slasher? Do they need, what is it that they will need? Are we able to provide whatever it is they need as an institution? So these are all questions that as an institution, we start asking ourselves even before we have advertised for this position. And these are very, very important questions for us to ask ourselves way before even this person comes in. Then we also have to ask ourselves about supervision. What responsibilities will the holder have? Who will supervise them? How will we measure what they do every day? What will we do if they don't do what is expected? How regularly will we evaluate what they do? What if they don't have all the skills they need? How do we know that? And how do we address those gaps? Have we allowed a process where they can give feedback to us and tell us, in this case, this is what I wanted to do. These are the resources you've given me. However, I am not able to perform very well because of 1, 2, 3. Do we have a process where these people that are holding these jobs can come back to us? I will hold there for questions or comments as we move on. Any question? Tuko pamoja? Madam Kate, am I by
Yes.
myself?
Yes,
Deb,
we are.
is there
Yes,
any,
we are, Madam Teacher.
We are here.
any question or comment so far? Okay, so now we'll start asking ourselves as we also look at the performance management. Now this person has come in. We have brought them on board. We know who their supervisor is. We know their job. We have interviewed and known that we have put the right person with the right skills, with the right abilities for this job. Now, this is the first time we'll start having Kate. Now Kate has reported to their job. Kate, what do you want your job to be as we move towards this? Give yourself a job. Ndegwa? My chairman,
Yes, teacher. Yes, teacher.
give yourself a job.
Madam
Receptionist.
Teacher, Chef,
Yes.
and me, Chef.
You're a chef.
Yes.
Ndegwa, what are you?
Receptionist.
Oh,
I was doing performance appraisal for a receptionist, so I can remember a few things on receptionist.
so you want to be a receptionist. All right. So the first thing is, now that you have come in as a receptionist, we have assessed you, we have known you, and we have welcomed you into this job as a receptionist, and we have welcomed Madam Kate as a chef. The first thing that we do as HRs, as these people come in, is make sure that we introduce them to their supervisors. So that Kate will be introduced to the head chef, and Ndegwa will be introduced to, I don't know whether receptionists report to the head of communications
Front office manager.
to the front office manager. And now that's where the HR almost hands over the mantle to your supervisor and ensures that Kate and Ndegwa understand their roles. This meeting should be documented. The front office manager and the head chef will sit with the new person that is coming to join the team. And as you introduce them to them, this even before they've gone to the kitchen to see where the cups and plates are, they are introduced to their job description and their TORs. And you're ticking them and making sure that they understand, almost like a 2-year-old. When somebody comes here, you stand up, you smile, you ask them their name, they sign here, you take their ID and retain 2,000 shillings, or is it? Give them 2,000 shillings, they give you your ID so that if you lose it, you will pay for them the ID money. Let this person know this is your job. Document that process. Ensure that it is properly signed, that I have signed, that I, Ndegwa, have understood that these are my roles, this is the person I report to, these are my responsibilities, this is what is expected of me. Do the same for the chef. This is what is expected of you from morning up till evening. This is what you shall do every day. Document that process. When that is documented, then this person now can be released to their supervisor so that they go and carry out their day-to-day activities. Make sure it doesn't end there. Make sure that the supervisor also knows that periodically you're assessing this person. But as they assess them, have you as HR, have you as the employer, because usually HR and employer are used almost interchangeably. Have you provided for these people with everything they need? Make sure that Kate has all the tools they need. She has a phone. Kate is in the kitchen, Ndegwa is at the reception. That they have a phone that works. They have the uniform that is required. That they have whatever, all the pamphlets they need for all the information they need. They need to know where Beatrice is going this afternoon, so that if somebody is asking, we know. Equip them. Don't tell Kate to go cook and she has no sufuria, she has no mwiko. How will she be able to make your ugali? Let the supervisor also know. So once that is documented, then now you move on to let the supervisors understand the periods so that they know every month, assess, review with this person. Most people will have a probationary period. So again, at probation, is this person performing well? Have a conversation with them again. What are they doing very well? What are they not doing very well? What are the gaps? How do we address them? I know Peter later will be looking at how difficult or easy it is for us to say, but she's not performing. She cannot cook her ugali very well, but she cannot smile at people. So you will have to periodically review and see what is it we are doing and how is it being done. It is important to make sure that as this person has come in, we have properly developed ways of checking this, the annual reviews. Who is doing our annual appraisals? Like Ndegwa is saying he's doing one currently. Are we doing it internally? Are we doing it externally? What is it we do? And let us be serious, because sometimes you're not very serious, especially with people that we like or people that are in very specific and unique jobs, people with very special skills. Those are the most problematic people, because you do not know what to do with this person. Na huyu sasa nikimfuta hata kama alikuja jana akiwa mlevi na hakufanya kazi yake. What am I supposed to do? And I don't know where to switch on power if it goes off. So sometimes I think internally we also have our own challenges where we are not able to follow through with the policies that we have. But it is important to have a very, very clear process and have them documented that cut across for all the employees, that this is what is expected of you. If you do not do this, these are the systems that we follow. If we realize you're not performing your job well, what will the supervisor do? The supervisor will call on you. The supervisor will check whether it is your skills. How do we escalate that process? And that as it's being escalated, how are we relating or treating this particular employee? Are we treating them with respect? Are we telling them Are we calling them names? What are we doing? It's important that we also be able to respect our employees, even as we discuss matters of performance with them, and to ensure that the line is very clear, so that you do not have your front office manager discussing your performance. You do not have the head of marketing discussing your performance at the front. You do not have anyone who is in management level coming to talk to you about how you do not smile at people very well. We need to be very, very clear who is communicating this. We have to have periodic times where we are discussing this performance with our staff. People forget, and people forget easily. When is the last time they were reminded what is expected of them? When is the last time we checked that they are up to date with the new methods of doing things? So it's important to have these periodic conversations. What is our plan for developing and increasing the skills of our staff members where they are lacking? Do we have training programs? What is it we do when we realize that our people are not performing very well? So it's important to be able to look at this very, very, very in details and be able to articulate them and make sure that even the staff understand this, so that somebody just doesn't feel victimized every time they are told you are not performing at par. So first is ensuring that they know what they are doing. They are empowered and equipped. They can give you feedback in case the pots and the mucos you've given them are not working very well. They know what to do and where to report to get that muco. They know that they can discuss their areas with you without being victimized. They know that there is a period. It's a 3-month period. It's a 6-month period. It's an annual period when we shall review this performance. And where gaps are found, there is a willingness, even from the side of management, to walk and work with me towards improving, so that it's not with every appraisal I will be reprimanded and told, no wonder you can never get promoted. Let us remember that performance management, once we have a very clear process of managing the performance, all the other issues of morale boosting for employees, who needs to be promoted, who are we transferring, who salary are we increasing, if it is based on performance management and there is a very clear structure, then there will not be as many conflicts, because it is clear and it is almost straightforward. So I will stop there for questions and all comments. Any question? Any question?
Hello, I have a question.
Yes, Martin.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is, especially when it comes to matter of, specifically to the salespeople. Now, there's a time of management or maybe supervisor set a target to a salesperson. As a best practice, it's supposed to be like a discussion, and the salesperson and his or her supervisor to come into agreement, or just supervisor to give the targets to this person? That's my question.
Asante sana. Any other question?
I have a question.
Yes, Norbert?
Yeah, I just want to confirm. I'm transitioning to HR, so I'm going to ask this question, because you've said that performance management begins from the time of onboarding, and it's a continuous process. And in your presentation, at what point do you sit down to set goals for a particular for this new hire? that you've brought into the company? At what point do you, because until now you've handed the person over to the supervisor. So at what point do you sit down to set the goals for this particular employee? Thank you.
Asante sana.
Madam Teacher,
Yes.
I think it's good we look at the chat. The chats are disabled, so let's see whether people can be able to write their chats, their questions through the chat. But I'm trying to write and it is disabled.
I'm trying to see from my, I think we should get the admin, who I think is at IHRM, to the host to enable that function.
Okay, fine. Let me point it out to him.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Bwana Peter, are you ready? I would like us to go to the next session, even as we answer the questions. Martin, I believe that when it comes to performance management and when it comes to assessing and setting targets, it should be, the organization has the goals, they know where we are going. So the goals are set at an organizational level. Your supervisor knows what is deliverables that are coming to an individual, and they should also be discussed. I believe it should be a discussion. You should have a conversation so that at that point you're able to say, but I'll be needing on 1, 2, 3 to be able to deliver at 3, 4, 5 level. Otherwise, if somebody just comes and says, I want you to run 44 miles, or I want you to get 50 customers, and as they tell you to get 50 customers, you're not enabled and you are not put in that discussion, then even monitoring, it will be skewed. The expectations will be skewed. It is very, very important to have that conversation. It has to be a discussion, not to allow somebody who is well equipped and well facilitated to say, no, I will only bring 10. No, but it is where you have equipped them, facilitated them, had a conversation with them so that it's an agreement. Editor? So
Hi,
yes, Peter.
Beatrice.
Yes.
Once again, thanks for this opportunity to engage. Perhaps you can guide how long do we have?
We have another hour or so.
Okay. And thank you, because I'm actually was picking a lot of notes from what you from your presentation, so that I was just picking up the conversation from the way it takes shape. And let me give, maybe by way of opening, let me share a case that I handled at the employment court, Nyeri. And in this case, an employee who was employed as a herder had been terminated. And the offense, as it was cited in the termination letter, was that they were not able to forestall an attack on the herd by wild animals. So he was in charge of 100 animals, and while he was in the wilderness, I'm sure most of us being in the Mount Kenya area, you are well conversant with the dynamics of a ranch setup. So while this employee was out there, the herd was attacked by some hyenas, and of course some, a loss. This employee was terminated, and the discussion came up before the judge. And there was one question that this employee asked the HR manager. As many of you, I don't know how many of us have been in a court session, because then the dynamics changes. It's about now the employee asking you the question, now the other way around. So Beatrice, I'm sure you resonate with being asked, can you remind me your name? Yeah, those are the kind.
Yes. I know that, yeah.
Yes. So these were the kind of questions, but it ended with, now, if it were you in charge of that herd, what have you, or what would you have done to prevent the hyenas from killing the cow? And that is now where I'm picking from the point of documentation, from the point of your standard operating procedures, from your point of the job descriptions from these employees. Yeah, because if you are not, for you to be able, if there's if there are cases that are very difficult for companies to win, are cases about performance. And this is because employees always have a way to win, for lack of a better word. They will just feign ignorance, like for that kind of a question where they are basically asking you, what would you have had me do? And they basically twist everything, because now, as it is, they start accusing the employer of having deployed them to a work environment that is unsafe. And even the HR or the livestock manager is not able to like come and tell the judge what they expected these employees to have done. Maybe also, having set tone with that example, let's borrow from Section 41 of the Employment Act, and then also we link it up with Section 44. Because this is one of the areas, again, we have had real issues, and we have had companies lose the court of law because of how they executed the separation on the basis of performance. And I know there are so many of us that have done dismissals on the basis of performance. And that's why it's very important for us to highlight the provisions of Section 44, and also as read together with Section 41. Now, Section 44 lists the grounds under which one may summarily dismiss an employee, and clearly performance is not one of them. Section 41 lists grounds upon which an employer may terminate an employee, and there are actually three. Before you contemplate, sorry, yeah, before Section 44 provides that before you contemplate taking disciplinary action or separation on the basis of performance, on the basis of discipline, and on the basis of physical incapacity, then that section of the law provides to give you a prescription on how the same must be executed. Now, if you look at the many precedents that have come from the Employment and Labor Relations Court, they have been very consistent that performance, or basically if you're to terminate someone on the basis of performance, then it has to be a journey. It's not an event. We're talking about you giving, first of all, demonstrating that you have very clear expectations of the performance, which in many cases you'll find is lacking. You find employers taking action on an employee that includes them losing their job, on a situation where there is no standard operating procedure, meaning the employee easily will say, I did not know, or I did not know it was meant to be done like that. And the moment an employee raises such kind of a defense in court, then the burden shifts. It is now the employer to indeed illustrate and demonstrate before the court that, first of all, there was a very clear procedure about how a certain task was meant to be done. Then the second thing was you had trained. Remember, as a manager, one of the management function is to train these employees. So you also have to demonstrate that you had actually trained this person and they understood, so that you get now what I would call both legal and moral authority to terminate an employment of contract. I mean, a contract of employment on the basis of performance. Now, when we bring in the aspect of PIPs, it basically means that an employee has a right to be put on notice to improve. An employee has a right to be, or rather to have a sitting, so that you get to know that before you take that drastic separate. We want to know whether it is an aspect of the equipment that you have given this person or the tools. They need to be established that they are adequately trained. And of course, like you say, they have been given a chance to improve on their performance. So as practitioners, what should always resonate in our mind, and especially before we execute a separation on the basis of that you're able to demonstrate that before the court of law. Now,
excuse me, Mr. Peter. Mr. Peter?
Yeah.
There are members who are out of they are not muted, so we can hear 4 other people speaking. So I'm kindly guiding that the members other than yourself to mute kindly.
Sure. You can proceed now. I think it's silent now. What I was also what I would also wish to emphasize again, based on our experience through the courts, is the journey towards the journey towards a termination process. And in this case, when you talk about a PIP, and maybe we may need to go and analyze our systems. When you're talking, there is no way you can talk of giving someone a performance improvement plan and then proceed and dismiss or terminate them on one offense. It definitely means that they need to be given a chance, which you will come and appraise them after a while to be able to see whether they have been able to take up or to improve on the set targets. Meaning, a termination on the basis of performance can only be a process of a journey that can be demonstrated that the employer had absolutely no other option than now to separate based on very clear standards that have been set. Let me also allude to, for instance, probation. And for many of us who I'm sure we have our Employment Acts, you realize that at the time the Employment Act came into place as 2007, the law was very clear that you cannot, an employee who has not completed a whole year has no right to sue an employer for unfair termination. But then, as you're very much aware, some employee was able to go to court, and the court, through their president, which is now law, basically, which basically declared that a section of the Employment Act as null and void, was very clear that even if someone is on a probation, like for instance, a 3 months probation or a 6 months probation, the court directed that this person still can sue the employer for unfair termination, and especially where there is no demonstration that adequate process was taken before ultimately separating with this person. And if you look at what this judgment, and that I'm inviting us to go and read it. It was basically, take a scenario like you have applied for a job, you are put on a probation. By getting an offer, you have actually quit your current job. And then once you get into the new employer, after 3 months, they just tell you that you are not happy with your performance. And on that basis, I am very sure most of us would resonate that that is a very clear and fair kind of a decision, given that someone or an employer would have had adequate time to first of all interview you, and basically try to be sure that before they give you the contract, or even before they give you the letter of offer, that they are convinced that you're adequately skilled and experienced to do the kind of job that they did employ you to do. Now, also one other issue that I know has come in, and like I said, I'll just be getting to those points that I know have played out in court, and in many cases to the detriment of the employer, is about the job description. And I know many of us always take advantage of any other duty. I know in every other JD, you'll say that you may be required to carry out any other duty as you may be required by the company from time to time. And let me give you an example about some of those interpretations, where one of the employer decided to have a driver. This is a flower farm. So they asked the driver to, as part of his job, to wash the bus. And the employee said no. And ultimately, there was a separation. So again, what was playing around, and perhaps in the Q&A section, you will tell me, is whether a washing of the truck or the bus is part of the JD or can be taken to be a reasonable task that can be said to be any other business. You are a driver, so does any other job that you may be assigned, or does any other duty that you may be assigned from time to time include washing of that car? If it does, then this employee, of course, will have disobeyed legal instructions. But if it was not within their scope, then you cannot take disciplinary action on them. I earlier spoke about measurability of the task that you're giving. And I think on that, we'll be going to the SMART aspect, where we are also asking about what you are asking them. By the time you're saying you did not perform, the question that always arises, and it is usually very keen to the courts or any other arbiter, whether it's at the Ministry of Labor, or even in the alternative dispute resolution, which we know are gaining traction. The question is, what you require this person to complete within a given period, was it reasonable? If you fail on that test, then you also fail on your moral authority to take disciplinary action on that person. Now, again, let me share an example of a case that I was handling at the employment court at Eldoret. And here, it was a case of an employee who was employed as a farrowing attendant. Farrowing attendant, they were employed into a pig farming farm, and therefore their duty was to attend to the mother pig when it got to the onset of getting, let me say for ease of us and understanding, to make sure that the piglets are all born alive, which could take, sometimes could even take 10 hours, but also to make sure that once they are born, they are not crushed or beaten by the mother. And on this particular case, as the supervisor was doing the rounds, they found 3 piglets that have been bitten by the mother and died. And of course, the employer, as would naturally be, was very not happy, and therefore took up this disciplinary action, and the matter ended up in court. And in this case, again, the same question arose. And I can vividly remember the conversation in court. And this employee now was asking the livestock manager that, you know, you have assigned me to do a very dangerous task. You know, this animal, that is a pig, can actually bite and even kill people, leave alone the piglets. And they went on to ask this manager, what did you expect me to do? Did you expect me to wrestle this animal? Would you have been happier if I was the one who was bitten instead of the piglet? So, and remember, when you're having this argument, you're doing it between a judge who is a layman. And once I say he's a layman, it means they don't work in your setup. They don't work in a flower farm. They don't work in a ranch. They don't work in your industrial setup. So they really want to listen to your case as a third party would be, and it is your job to convince them that indeed you were able to do and equip this person to do what they needed to have done for them to satisfactorily perform their task before you take the whip, which would be the disciplinary sanction. But in this case, in Eldoret, I can recall how the manager was very, very elaborate about this is our SOP. Once we have trained you to be able to know that at the onset of the piglet birth, and I mean, you are supposed, first of all, to watch the sign, and you have trained you and you have signed on it. You are supposed to have some muzzle, which you are supposed to muzzle the pig on to make sure it doesn't bite the piglets. We have trained you on how to handle that animal so that it doesn't injure you, because that's a health and safety thing. And on that case, the employer was able to win, because here it was very clear that the employee did not perform their job the way they ought to have performed. And this led to losses on account of the employer, and therefore the employer was justified to take disciplinary action that in this case included a separation. So let's watch on issues of discrimination again, because when you are dealing with when you don't have standards, then it means someone can always go and say that, you see, it was really not about the job. It was because this person or this employer prefers people from this ethnicity, prefers these people from this religion, or I was identified because of my disability status, I was targeted because of my religion. And you see, these are the things that are now playing out in court. And once an employee raises that, remember, under the Section 5 of the Employment Act, it provides that if an employee raises issues of discrimination, then the duty to justify that there was no discrimination now is reversed back to the employer. So if an employee is simply saying, I know the only reason, it was not because of the job, it was simply because I know this guy does not like people from this community or something like that, then what will save your situation? What will save your company is if you're able to come up with an empirical formula that shows that this is the reason, these were the processes adopted, and that these are the measures that have been put in place to ensure that nobody is targeted because of anything or their protected status. Yeah. So also one thing that you need to check, and this has come up very aptly in court, is where you justify your case for termination. Let me say so. But then you immediately faced with a case for defamation. Now, as a legal practitioner, if you ask me which one is more grave, I would tell you to watch on defamation. But before you tell someone you're not a good performer and these and these and these and these and these, and you actually document it in a termination letter, you should be more worried, because if you just do a termination, then the liability for the company is actually capped at 12 months. But if you're now dealing with the issue of a manager or any of your employees, and they end up showing that indeed they were performing their job according to the JD and the instructions that you give to them, and you have publicized a letter out there that this person is not a good performer, then you have a bigger problem than just dealing with the case of unfair termination. So again, let's watch on that before we put it in print that you have been terminated for poor performance. Let us be sure that if you are tasked to go and prove the same, you're able to establish, because what naturally will be happening is after, and assuming your employee wins against a case for poor performance, then it means that judgment allows them now to sue the company in a civil court for disparaging their character, for defaming them, for, we even now compound that because you'll be saying now even lack of future earnings, we talk about all those things, and I can tell you from where I sit that is more costlier than just dealing with a person, and perhaps even on a contract, you let that contract lapse. Again, I know I will want us to have some questions, and I would not wish to push this too much. And so perhaps I will take it back to the team so that we have time to respond to any of the areas. Like I said, I will share my slides. I will be guided on how it gets to the participants, but perhaps I can be guided, or I have some text question coming in, see which one I need to attend to. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Peter. Very, very informative. And I'm glad that all of us are getting to know both areas of the practice as we do it and as we know it every day as HR practitioners, and you guiding us very ably on what we will find on the other side. I think, Peter, you touched on section 44, and there are two areas as HRs that we like very much. That is 44.4c and 44e. That's where we hide behind when we are talking about performance. If you could guide us on that, and then there is a question about how many times you can put somebody on PIP. But I think the first one is just guiding us on 44.4c and 44.4e.
Okay. Yeah, this is maybe for the sake of the team, we can highlight the exact section and what they provide so that everyone is on the same page. Otherwise, I know you are our Wakili, by all means.
All right. So C, 44.4e, an employee willfully neglects to perform any work which it was his duty to perform, or if he carelessly and improperly performs any work which from its nature it was his duty under his contract to have performed carefully and properly. That is C.
Yeah, I think so that you're in the same page. It was important that you bring that up. But yes, under section 44, that is the one section or subsection that allows you to work on the default. But you see, it alludes to the same thing that you've been saying, that you did not do your job properly, or you did your job carelessly, knowing that it was your duty to perform your job carefully. Now, whose duty is it to prove that? That's where we fail. Otherwise, the law allows you, assuming you have a security guard who just decided to sleep, or you have a driver who decided not to check that the vehicle had maybe enough levels of the oil. And what happened is the vehicle, of course, stalled, costing you millions. That in itself is actionable under Section 44. This is now not a performance issue. This is willful neglect. Let me give you an example of a case I was dealing with in Kitale. And the company procured an expensive equipment, which is a harrow. They deal with maize seed plantations. Now, that machine was very clear that you cannot make a left turn on it. Yeah, it has to be a right. I may be guided by others who are into farming. Maybe I'm misusing the right and left, but this is how complicated it gets in code, because you really want to know why is it you can't do a right and you can't. It looks easy. In fact, a judge or an arbiter will not understand why somebody had to lose their job simply because they made a left or a right. But you see, out of the specification of that machine, by just making that right turn, this guy cost the company losses that ran into millions. And there was very clear evidence that they had been trained on how to operate that equipment. They had actually signed that they had been taught and they understood. And in that case, the courts had no problem upholding a dismissal. So yeah, maybe on that, that's what I would want to say, that it will still boil down to what are your documents? What are the employees trained? Have they signed? Do you have an SOP? I mean, have you given them an opportunity to keep improving before you just say they were negligent? So yeah, that would be my take on that.
Thank you. And E?
Again, for the purpose of the team.
Thank you. An employee willfully, knowingly fails to or refuses to obey a lawful and proper command, which it was within his scope of his duty to obey, issued by his employer or a person placed in authority over him by his employer.
Yeah, thank you. On that one, what you need to be sure before you even give that kind of action cause for an employee to respond to. You see, that's a very important statement, that if an employee refuses to obey a lawful instruction given by a person placed in authority over them by the employer or someone who is maybe has authority over them. So here, that section will first of all be speaking to who do you report to? Yeah, who do you report to? Because an employee should not know everybody. In some cases, even employees do not know the directors. They don't even know the owners of capital. And so it is very possible, like again, I can give you an example of one farm where the director was driving into the company premises and got a puncture and found some employees taking care of the loans by the roadside, and he asked for their assistance. And this employee told them, unless when the uombe ruhusa kwa supervisor, we can't help you. So here I'm talking about who is the person placed in authority. Who does your JD tell you that you report? Then the second aspect of that section of the law is about what is the scope of your duty. Again, here when we alluded to a point where someone tells you in the face that that's not my job, yes, you kazi yangu. Yeah. And then we are also talking about lawful instructions. you cannot validly enforce instructions that are not lawful. So if you look at it in those three perspectives, you also realize that you need to be very careful for you to use that section, like dismiss someone. Thank you.
Asante, Peter. We have some questions on the chat section. Peter, are you able to see them, or do I read them out?
Can you read them?
So there is one that is, how do you giving feedback to your supervisor? You know, like if you have a supervisor who is not just a good supervisor, how do you give feedback on that? Because that affects your performance.
I would take that to be a grievance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that should be handled through the grievance handling system, meaning should be escalated to their managers, and because here you're talking about someone who maybe is unhappy about how they are being treated by their supervisor, or they are not, something like that. So for me, I would take that to be a grievance.
Thank you. How many times can you put someone on PIP?
Again, it's not about how many times. I think what we should have at the back of our mind, a PIP, we will always want to know, or what the court will want to know, is why did you have to put them on another period? Like for instance, the first time somebody might come and tell you, sikuelewa vile, sikuwa nimeelewa vizuri. Then the second time, this person may come and tell you, the equipment that you had given me failed. The third one, they will come and tell you, nilikuwa na stress za nyumbani. So really, it will not be about how many times. What the courts or any arbiter will be looking at, whether it is a behavioral deficiency or it is something that is genuine that can happen to any human being. So if somebody tells you, sababu si kufanya hii kazi because I lost my child, hata kama angekuwa amepatiwa performance improvement zingine mbili, I can tell you may not justify it before the court that kwa sababu walimaliza 2 times, then on this one they have to go. So I would put it not on a prescription, but more on what you can be able to justify before the judge. Always ask yourself as a practitioner, always ask yourself as a manager, will you be able to look at the judge or the labor officer and justify that the only way to deal with the situation you had at hand was a separation? If you're able to, you can even do it with just one mistake. If you're not able to, you are told, look, you know when we say that part of the decisions that actually guide decisions in employment code is actually the length of service. So the whole aspect is about you building your people and not looking at an opportunity to like kick them out. But then only kick them out if it stops working for capital. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So a PIP is not a warning letter.
It must not, but then it could be.
It could be, depending on how it's worded.
Exactly.
All right.
Like for instance, you may have said that your output lazima ufikishe hii target, and you have no reason to explain why you have not been reaching those targets. That could be a sanction, a discipline sanction.
Thank you. If an employee is terminated months after a PIP ended, where they refuse to sign an MSA and are terminated on performance basis in the long run, is this the lawful? Is this the lawful, and what are the risks?
If they refused to sign or cooperate, then that for me, I would not go for performance. That is refusal to obey lawful instruction. That is under section 44. That one is the summary dismissal. So again, on this, I would say let's not mix. If you find this is another ground that is presented by the law to have you dismiss someone, then forget, abandon the PIP, and then give someone a show cause. Why did you refuse? Because that, you remember that section of the law is actually very, very, very explicit, that where you even behave in a manner insulting, not only you talk, you abuse someone or insult someone. For you to have somebody come and throw to you, I don't know whether you call it a warning letter or something, that in itself rude and could justify a dismissal on its own.
All right. How do you handle a scenario where an employer responds to an employee in relation to his/her probation report after 8 months, yet the probation period was 6 months, and it is either a termination or an extension of the probation? So where as an employer, you don't come in at the right time. You don't respond within 6 months, you evaluate way after that, and then you're not satisfied with the performance of this employee.
Yeah, again, I may want to refer to the law, but there is a maximum period that you can have someone on probation. And if, like, for instance, again, so that I don't misguide the team, if I'm not wrong, I think it is a 3 months and another 3 months plus 6 months.
3 months, yes.
But ideally, it means that if by that time you had not released someone out of poor performance, then they have been confirmed. So you may not change your mind later that 8 months, you're saying, by the way, I was not happy with the performance. That's why there is a limit, a statutory limit on how many, first of all, how long the probation and how many times you can actually renew it.
Thank you, Peter. I think I would just like to add here the importance of precedents and how that towards the end finds you in court or weakens the case of the employer, where an employee says, but as it was in the beginning, as it was done, and for some reason, employees have very, very good memory, and you're taken down memory lane of when this person did this, this happened. When this person did this, this happened. And when you're in court or when we are handling that process, it is then found out, or rather realized, that you're not dealing with a case of performance, but then it's turned to look like it's a case of discrimination. So I would really, really emphasize on the need to really document and be very, very clear while you're articulating the job description to this person. And as you do so, make sure that you're relating it to the skills and the capabilities of this particular employee. Otherwise, somebody is going to come and say they studied how to herd cows, and you're now putting them to pigs, and they just don't know anything about cows. Lakini kwa sababu ni kazi, nikafanya tu. And as the employer, you have nothing to show in between, which then weakens our case. Do we have any more questions? Madam Kate, we have another, I think, 11 or so minutes. Yes, Martin?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Okay, I have 2 questions. One, it is on the fixed contract. Let us assume that this employee, his contract is due to expiry, but to note that this is a fixed contract, and employer want to take this as an advantage. Maybe he is not interested with his or her performance of this employee. So is there any clause in the labor laws that requires to this employer to give a notice that we will not, due to ABCD, we won't renew your contract? That's one question. Then second question is on, let's assume that we have a female employee who proceeds to maternity leave, but her contract expires while she is on maternity. And I remember in the labor laws, we have that clause that especially when an employee is out of office, but especially on an official visit, then an employer is allowed to extend the contract of this employee until she's back or he's back. Then now he can terminate the contract. My case is especially on the fixed contract. Thank you.
Peter?
Yeah, if it is a fixed term contract, there is basically no obligation to give notice, because ideally these employees on notice all through, assuming you've been issued with a 1-year contract, which you are told it starts today on the 21st November and it will end on the 21st November 2024. You are on notice all through. There is no legal requirement, but you always said, and I know you followed the decision of the court where they said, unless you have been creating expectations. Like, for instance, someone has been on that 1-year contract for the last 5 years. Now, in this case, you may now not just wake up one time and you're saying contract yako imeisha. They have a right to ask what happened. So again, there is no, if it is a fixed term contract, no legal obligation to either renew or to give you notice for not renewing, or even to give you reasons why you will not be renewing. But if by your own action, you have created expectations that it will be renewed, then someone has a right to ask, why me? Why did you renew for this and not this? And perhaps I patch that with your next question, which is on maternity. Because in this case, you're saying this person has had their contract renewed for the past 2, 3, 4 years. But now you are aware they are pregnant, and therefore you refuse to renew their contract. That becomes a typical case of discrimination, and you may not use the justification that their contract lapsed. Yeah. So, but then again, if there were no expectations created, then even if for an expectant lady, there is no obligation to renew that contract on the basis of maternity. Maternity leave is an employment benefit that you only get to enjoy if you have a valid contract. So if it elapses, assuming that is 2 months or a month prior to the lapse of your contract, then there is no obligation for the employer to renew it on the account that you are pregnant. But on this, I need to put in a very clear rider that if it is established that the only reason that you did not extend that contract is because of the maternity, then you have a bigger problem than just paying this employee for another month or 2, because now that becomes discrimination. Thank you.
All right, we have Ezekiel Otuoma's hand up, and we have Mary Wairimo's hand up. So we'll start with Ezekiel and then Mary. Ezekiel? Mary? Those that have their hands up?
Beatrice,
Ezekiel?
see we have 5 minutes.
Yes, we have 2 hands up, or do we just wind up?
We wind up because number 1, we have 5 minutes. Number 2, our council member is here.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you very much. We have a very good participation of 101 participants. Thank you so much for listening in and showing up for this. We are here to deliberate and help each other grow. Asanteni sana. Peter, your remarks, and then we hand it to Ndegwa.
Thank you, Beatrice, and for the opportunity to discuss with the team. Yeah, I look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Asante sana. Ndegwa, back to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to just be with you.
Thank you very much for all the over 100 participants. Every time we have Mr. Peter Kinyanjui, we attract very many participants. You know, in HR, the legal aspect is the elephant in the room. Everything we do as HRs, we are cognizant to the fact that there is redress. Council member, this is our last program for 2023. We're hoping we get more feedback from our members so that we do better next year.
Okay.
Madam Kate.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Mine is to appreciate you. Thank you very much for thinking about this webinar. It has actually attracted over 100. At the time that Peter was concluding, we were 105. So it means it has gone nationally. And thank you very much, Peter, at the same time. Thank you for being there for us. You have really, really, really opened us up. Thank you for defamation. That is something actually we assume as HR professionals. But from now onwards, we'll actually be looking at it critically. Madam Tisha, Beatrice, thank you so much. It was well done. And thank you for everybody else who have joined. And we say thank you as well to the IHRM for the opportunity for us to get this link. Back to you, Chairman. Thank you very, very much. And enjoy the rest of the evening.
I just wish everyone a happy holidays and you can live at will.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.